The following is a production of Frank DeFreitas and the Internet Webzine of Holography.
Hello everyone, this is Frank DeFreitas and welcome to another week of HoloTalk for the week of November 14th, 1999. A little bit of a special and different type of show this week. What I'm going to do is take a look back at the last year in holography, specifically with laser pointers and laser diodes, and not so much go over it line by line as far as what happened and when it happened, but I'd like to take all of these different elements that's happened within the last year and put them together into some sort of a way of taking a new look at holography and how we can do holograms in new and exciting ways with a completely new system, basically. I think once we finish with this show, you'll see that holograms really are being done or will be done in a much different way. Of course, there's still traditional ways as well. Will continue for years and years, but we'll take a look at some of the advantages of doing them this way as well. The big news that just came in earlier today was from John Clare, and John's been working with laser pointers and fiber optics. And if you remember from last year, John was on the show, and he likes to go into caves, and previously he would take his helium neon laser and put it in PVC plastic plumbing pipe and with end caps, and also take a 6-volt motorcycle battery and crawl for maybe what would be 45 minutes to an hour with the motorcycle battery tied to his leg, the helium neon laser thrown over his back, and crawling through these caves, and have to set up all this stuff inside the cathedral parts of the caves themselves. He was real happy to learn about laser pointer holography because he could just put a laser pointer in his pocket, go down and do the cave thing. But he's moved on to larger power diodes now. He's working with a 35 milliwatt, and he's recently been working with fiber optics. And, you know, there's nothing new about doing a hologram with fiber optics. I think I've read several times in the past that it's already been done, but John has done something that is very big news and shows a lot of promise. And I'm going to get him on the show within the next week or two when things have been completely finalized. But let me bring you up to date on what it is that he's done. Using 2 laser pointers, and eventually he wants to move on using this with larger power diodes as well. He combined 2 laser pointers and sent them through ball lenses, which you can find in like the Edmunds catalog. They're just like marbles, and I think John's even used marbles. And essentially what that does is when you take the laser pointer or the laser diode and send it through one of the ball lenses, on the other side of the ball lens, you'll see a really bright spot of laser light, and that's where you take your fiber optic and just press it right up against the ball where that spot is, and the light travels through the fiber optic. Well, he did a very successful single fiber hologram, which, you know, I believe has been done, not necessarily with the laser pointer, but with other lasers. But what he did this time is he took 2 laser pointers. Now remember, these fibers are very thin. They're hair thin, maybe a little bit larger than hair thin in diameter. And when you take 2 of those or more and can bind them together, they become, to the hologram, looking at it, a point source. It doesn't matter if you have 1 fiber, 2 fibers, 3 fibers, 4 fibers, or 5 fibers. It's still so small. In fact, 5 fibers would be less than a millimeter in diameter when they're all put together and held together, which is actually a smaller point source than the exiting laser beam of helium neon lasers, which is around a millimeter, or your laser diodes or laser pointers, which is also around a millimeter or so. So you've got a very small point source, and the hologram plate, holographic plate, sees this as a single point source of light. And it doesn't matter if you're using a number of different diodes or pointers to send your light to the holographic plate. So he made a very successful hologram using 2 laser pointers going through 2 fibers, having the fibers connected together, closely together, and firing just straight at the holographic plate. And he says it's almost like a beautifully spatially filtered light going to the holographic plate, unlike what goes through lenses and things of that nature. Now, what's going to be exciting about this, We're going to find out about this as time goes on. It was successful with 2. Can it be successful with 4 or 5? And if it can it be successful with the higher powered diodes? Can you imagine having 35 milliwatt diodes, 5 of them all being pumped into fiber optics, and then having all those fibers all compact and nice and tightly together, providing the illumination for your single beam hologram? And John Clare has verified that the power is increased by using the 2 pointers. He shut one of them off and took his reading, then turned the other one on, so that he had 2 of them on, and took another reading with his photometer system that he's got set up down there, and said that he did see that the 2 powers were combined in brightness. So would it be possible to put 5 35 milliwatt diodes together, feed them into fiber, have those fiber strands all packed tightly together into one little point source, and wind up with about 100 milliwatts or so of power? Wouldn't that be absolutely incredible? This is really big news. And I've spoken to a few people trying to get some input on this. And I've got a few varying different explanations, very similar to when laser pointer holography started and diode holography started. There were just about the same number of opinions as there were people that you would ask, why does this now work, when after years and years people said that it could not be done. And I'm seeing the same thing with this. So we're going to have to take a closer look at it and find out exactly why it works the way it does. Do all of these beams, as they're exiting out of the individual fibers, recombine into one wavefront, traveling to the holographic plate and creating the constructive and destructive interference in the emulsion? Or if you have 5 laser pointers or 5 diodes, are you essentially creating 5 separate holograms on that holographic plate? But the fibers are so close together and packed so tightly that when you re-illuminate or play back the hologram, you do not see 5 individual holograms, because to the hologram itself, they were so close together it just saw the 5 individual sources as one point source. So there are a number of questions that need to be asked, but the big news is that John Clare has created a hologram using more than one laser pointer. I know Steve Michael and I had spoken about this earlier in the year, the possibility of using 2 laser pointers, but that was a little bit different because we were taking a look at split beam holography, where one laser pointer would provide the reference beam and the other laser pointer would provide the object beam. So this is something a little bit different than what Steve and I were talking about and trying to work out earlier in the year. But it fits in very nicely with this show, because what we're going to do is take another look at single beam holography and its reemergence as a very viable way of doing holograms, especially with diode lasers right now. So what I did is I wrote down a number of different things excuse me, that I'd like to cover with you and sort of put together the different advances that have happened within the last year using diodes to create holograms, along with a few other things as well. And what emerges from all these individual things is a completely new way of looking at holograms and doing holography in the first place. Of course, we start off with our diodes themselves, and the diodes are definitely a cause of quite a bit of excitement in the holographic community, originally just with amateurs and hobbyists, but now several professional holographers seem very excited about this development as well. So we are starting to see quite a bit of excitement and the move away from your traditional gas lasers to the diode lasers themselves. And not surprisingly, since relatively high power. I mean, we're not looking into the watts of power here, but we are looking into, compared to the helium neon laser, some higher powers such as 35 milliwatts, and the possibility of getting a hold of these new 50 milliwatt diodes when they're out, and at low cost. At low cost. They're small. Don't drop one of the raw diodes on the floor, because you're going to be down on your hands and knees looking for them. You can't see them. And portable. Even the modules themselves with the battery power supplies that you can build for them, you can stick them right in your shirt pocket at 35 milliwatts. So that's one thing that we're all fairly aware of already. And also, we want to talk about, I'd like to mention the recording materials that are available, both the HRT recording materials and Slavic recording materials that are showing a very high diffraction efficiency, especially with single beam work, which traditionally with the older AGFA materials gave, so-so results. There's been some very nice single beam holograms created using AGFA materials, but nothing compared to the brightness and clarity and snap of the single beam work that the newer materials with their higher diffraction efficiencies can provide. And not to mention making your own holographic plates. That was a development that was just reported on this show 2 weeks ago by Jeff Blythe, who had sent some materials to me that was published in one of the journals. And for your information this week, and I still receive emails requesting this information. This hasn't died down yet by any stretch of the imagination with these make your own holographic plates. On the HoloTalk page, you will find a link to those materials once again, both the published paper and also the worksheet on how it's done. So on the HoloTalk page, I've got that backup for you because I've received several emails about where can I find this, blah, blah, blah. It's up there for you now. So take advantage of that, download that, and go over those materials. And who knows, you can make your own holographic plates. There's also several new processing techniques. I got a call on Friday from Hans Belkhagen, and I believe he's going to come on the show and talk to us about different processing techniques to use with both the HRT and Slavic materials to really give high diffraction efficiencies, even beyond some of the efficiencies that we've got currently using the processing schemes that we've reported in the past, such as the pyrochrome process and whatnot. So that's going to be interesting to see. Now, where does this take us? We've got three things here. We've got inexpensive diodes. We've got they exceed the performance of the helium neon laser with their stability and their coherence length. So we've got a source that's brand new, that's working better than any other source before. We've got the new recording materials, and we've got new processing techniques. Well, this puts us in a position to do so much more with single beam work. And why single beam? Well, here's a couple reasons. Let's take a quick visit to split beam land. Everyone always wanted to do split beam holograms, and also the H1 H2 transfers where you do your laser transmission master and then you do your reflection copy from that H1 master. One of the main reasons for doing that in the first place was due to the fact that the earlier recording materials did not display a very high diffraction efficiency in the first place. And you had the ability to adjust your beam ratios and get them to the point where you could really dial in about the brightest hologram that you could get by using either a variable beam splitter or having several beam splitters like your 50-50s, 40-20s, 40-60s, 30-70s, and so on and so forth if you couldn't afford one of those big variable beam splitters. But with the new recording materials, some of the single beam holograms that I've done on the new materials are brighter than any of the H1 H2 transfers that I've done with the helium neon laser. So what is the point? Some people say, well, I can illuminate my master subject better with a split beam setup. I can control the illumination light a lot better. Well, that may be true and it may not, but I'd also like to point you to a web page by Vidar Hegdal, and Ronnie Anderson of Norway. They have the Holography in Norway page, and on that page you will see some really nice setups for doing single beam work where you can control the illumination of the object. Yes, that's true. You can control the illumination of your object and even get extra illumination still doing single beam work. And you'll find a link for that right on the HoloTalk page, so you might want to take a look at that as well. Now, here's one of the more exciting things that's come out. As you know, and as I've reported in the past, and I've also given a few cautions, you can make holograms with a laser diode module without the collimating lens in there. Now, here's why I give this caution. In several instances, the laser diode assembly itself, I have to get a phone call because no one's picking this up on a Sunday night. Hold on, please. Okay, that's what I get for doing a show on a Sunday night. In any case, you have to be very careful when you do this, because in some laser diodes, they require the light reflected off of that collimating lens back into the diode assembly in order to control the current. And if you remove that collimating lens, the photodiode that reads that reflected light no longer has that reflected light to read. And that's a very important part of the entire circuit, is to make sure that that photodiode sees that light if it's designed to do so. Now, some laser diodes you can do it with. Other ones, if you do it, you will destroy them. Some laser diode modules, like the 35 milliwatt one that I have from Power Technologies, you cannot even adjust that collimating lens when that laser is at full power, or you will destroy the diode itself. So you have to be very careful with this. You have to know what laser diode you have before you try it, because I know there's a few advocates out there of just taking it out, which works fine with some of the laser pointers, because a lot of the laser pointers don't have the photodiode feedback circuit in there in the first place. But if you've just gone out and bought yourself one of the expensive diode modules and you do that and you burn it out, you're going to be very sorry you did it. But for the ones that can do this, and the laser diode system that Sam and I designed, you can do this. You do not need the collimating optics. Okay? The light that comes out of that diode automatically spreads out. It spreads fairly rapidly, but that's okay for single beam work. You just adjust how far away you need to have that diode from your plate in order to cover it, whether it's a 4 by 5 inch plate, an 8 by 10 inch plate, or a 30 by 40 centimeter plate. You just continue to move your diode back further and further until you've got a nice clean spread. And it is a very nice clean spread. It looks like a perfectly spatially filtered spread of light. There is not a there is no dust in it. There are no Newton's rings. There's nothing in that at all. It's just a beautifully clean spread of light coming right out of that diode. But once again, make absolutely certain that your laser will be able to do that before you do it, or you'll be sorry that you did it. Now, what this boils down to is this. You do not need any optics in the setup. All you need is your laser diode module without the collimating lens. And keep in mind that if you're doing single beam work, you don't need your 4 by 8 foot holography table anymore, because the only components that need to be isolated from vibration are the object and the plate. Your laser does not have to be isolated in part of that system. Your laser can be just about anywhere you want to put it, and it will be fine as long as your object and your plate is isolated from vibration. So what we can do is we can build ourselves a little rig, and I'm going to do so over the next few weeks because I'm going to start doing my holograms this way. Build yourself a little rig that will be adjustable to hold either 4 by 5, 8 by 10, or 30 by 40 centimeter holograms. And you can also build it so that the light either comes from above or it comes from below. And you have racks inside there where you can put your object on a rack, you can put your plate on another rack, you can light it with very creative types of lighting according to the web page that you're going to visit on the link there as well. And once you have that hologram completed and you have it processed, you can put it back in the rack and re-illuminate it with your laser light once again, providing the emulsion did not shrink, so you have to make sure your processing technique is correct. And you can adjust the rack assembly inside of the unit and put your copy plate, so you can do an H1 to H2 transfer right in that rack. And that rack is the only thing that needs to be isolated. which means the only system that you need to have isolated would be the size of whatever the largest plate is that you're going to do. If the largest plate that you're ever going to do is 30 by 40 centimeters, that's how large your table's going to be. That's how large the rack is, and that's all you need to isolate is that rack. If the largest plate you ever plan on doing is 8 by 10, then your rack is going to be 8 by 10, and that's the only thing that needs to be isolated is that rack. So, and your laser can be located anywhere at all. So basically, you're talking about just about a portable, completely portable holographic system that doesn't require any optics, can probably sit right on the front seat of your car with your laser in your pocket and go anywhere you want to go and make holograms, or make them anywhere you want to around the house or in the basement or whatever. So this is what's changed in holography, and let me just go down and tell you what it is that I'm going to be doing, and you'll see how much different this is than the traditional way of doing holography. I'm going to build my rack system so that I can make holograms up to 30 by 40 centimeter. And inside that rack system, I'm going to have it adjustable so that if I have 8 by 10 plates, I can change one of the racks and it's 8 by 10. If I have 4 by 5 inch plates, I can change the rack and it will be for 4 by 5 inch plates. I will be able to have it so that I can hit it with light that's coming from above or light that's coming from below. I will not have to spatially filter the light because I'm going to be using the raw diode, which is just going to spread out and go onto the rack. I'm going to have another rack in the rack that will hold my object in place, and the plate will go above that. I can just put that right in the rack and have that wait until it settles, do my exposure, and process my plate. And I can then put that plate back in the rack once again and illuminate it with the laser light while I have another plate, which is maybe an inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, or however far away I determine it should be, and make an image plane transfer. All happening, everything's happening right in that little rack system. And I don't have a spatial filter. I don't have a lens. All I have is just a little laser that fires into that rack. And remember, these are not going to be very dim, low-quality holograms. These are going to be very high diffraction efficiency holograms. These are, go to Ronnie and Vidar's page and see the beautiful images that they're making. Although they are working on a table there, but you'll get the same type of results with the rack, providing that you have the rack itself isolated from vibration as well. So there's no need for the tables anymore in holography either. So we've got a number of different things that's happened in the last year. When all brought together, really does change holography, because picture this last year, someone coming along and saying that you can have a 35 milliwatt laser system that runs off of batteries and fits into your shirt pocket, doesn't require any lens, doesn't require any spatial filter, but yet you'll get a beautifully spatially filtered beam coming out of it, and you don't need a holography table. You just need a little rack to do single beam holograms, which are not the dim single beam holograms that we're used to. They're very bright and image planed single beam holograms that are made with a little portable rack system. Think about that. It's really changing the way the holography is being done. And with this new discovery from John Clare, it's just getting more and more exciting every minute. There for a while I was thinking, well, maybe we're starting to reach the end of what it is that we can do. We know we can do laser diode holography now with higher powered diodes. Maybe we've reached the end, but lo and behold, I get a call from John last week saying he was setting these experiments up. I spoke to him today. Excuse me, I need a drink of water here. Hold on. Spoke to him today, and he filled me in on the experiments he did using the multiple laser pointers and multiple fibers to create that hologram that he created. And I'm really looking forward to see if we can't work something out where we've got like 5 of those diodes going and stacked at one time, providing all that illumination, powers way beyond anything that's available at those wavelengths traditionally. Even the Spectraphysics 125B is a 50 milliwatt laser, and if you've got a good tube in there and it's running pretty good, you'll maybe get 60, 70, maybe 75 milliwatts out of it. But look at the price. You're looking at 5 figures for that, used. Here we are. This is a very exciting time. I hope you enjoyed this show. I hope I didn't make things too confusing, but I really wanted to look back and see all the different things that have happened over in the last year, because each of these things happened sort of individually. And I wanted to put them together into one working system and just show how all of this has come together and given us what could be considered a new way of doing holograms and holography in general. And I'm sure that as time goes on, this base system will be improved upon, and we will notice many, many different types of holograms that we will be able to get out of this system. So thanks for tuning in. I'll make sure to get John Clare on the show in a week or 2 weeks when he's got his experiments finalized. And I hope you tune in each and every week. I've got some interesting guests coming up, and my pleasure bringing you the information. If you have any emails about this program, I'm going to be out of town Monday and Tuesday, so if you can hold your emails off until Wednesday, I'd appreciate it so my mailbox doesn't get all clogged up. Thank you very much. This is Frank DeFreitas for HoloTalk. See you next week.